So you brought up the defense. So if you're just looking at numbers and looking at metrics and seeing, okay, how good is this offense versus their defense, their offense versus our defense? Well, Tennessee might have the best offense in the country. Most people have thought that to be Ohio State going back to the offseason. Tennessee's just as good. So it's arguably the best offense in the country. Tennessee is like a top 15 defense in the country. Can't completely go by the metrics. You have to put it into context, of course, against who they played and the underlying numbers and so forth. You flip that, and Kentucky is a competent offense. They've got a future NFL quarterback. They have one of the best running backs in the SEC in Chris Rodriguez. And Tennessee, though, on defense. So
it's obviously the biggest weakness of this team is on the defensive side of the ball, and it's specifically the passing defense. Tennessee, it flies under the radar. Tennessee has the number 8 rushing defense in America this year, and it's been huge. They kept Anthony Richardson in check. They kept Daniels in check from LSU. They kept Jahmyr Gibbs in check. Alabama was not looking to run Bryce Young, clearly, and Bryce Young just threw all over that secondary. But yeah, I mean, it's the number 8 rushing defense in America.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, okay. It's like I said, it flies under the radar, doesn't it? It's that defensive line, and it's led by the guys on the edges and Amari Thomas on the interior. They really have been effective, and I think where this game matters, getting to the Kentucky matchup, where things matter in this game, it's a nightmare matchup for Kentucky because they predicate their offense on the run. Well, Tennessee has the number 8 rushing defense in America. Will Levis, a competent passer, but he's not great. So maybe you could chop Tennessee up there, but he's not great. Like he's not Bryce Young. And so there's that. But then I think the big one is Kentucky has given up 26 sacks on the season. It's a horrific stat for them. And I think that plays right into Tennessee's hands because Tennessee has been really aggressive in blitzing. Tim Banks has made a point in that, and they've really gotten after quarterbacks. They smashed Pittsburgh's quarterbacks. They really got after Daniels at LSU. I mean, they caused a lot of problems in that backfield. They were pressuring Bryce Young all day to the point where the refs probably missed a targeting call on Amari Thomas in that game. Alabama fans were very, very upset. And here's the thing, Alabama fans, you wouldn't have won regardless, even if that was called. So the refs did not hand you that game. But they've just gotten after quarterbacks all season long. And I think if you're Kentucky, you're looking at that going, ooh, that's not great. And so if they can stop Rodriguez, they can get to Levis in the backfield. That's a bad place to start because what Tennessee will do is turn right around and score a touchdown on you on every single possession that they have. In the last 3 games they've played, they have punted 3 times. The last 3 SEC games they played, they've punted 3 times, in fact. So that when you look at that as Kentucky, that's really got to scare you because this is I've tried to watch Kentucky analysis so far this week to see what they're thinking. And they're really talking about this Tennessee team as if this is last year's Tennessee team, where they're going, well, we were able to go blow for blow with them last year. This isn't last year's team. I know you want to think it is. It's not even remotely. And I know it's going to sound like I'm coming off with orange-colored glasses and everything. Seriously, don't think that. Because what happened last year is that Josh Heupel ran that tempo offense, and that's what worked, was the tempo. He could kill you with it, and he killed Kentucky with it. But this year, he can kill you with the tempo. And then he can also, like, you can have a player fake an injury and give yourself a timeout and stop the tempo, and Josh Heupel will still move the ball on you. That's the difference this year, is because he figured out that element, and he's done it against Alabama, and he's done it against LSU, and he did it against Florida, and he did it against Pittsburgh, and he's done it against every team that he's played this year. I mean, go watch the second half of the LSU game. That's the one that I really would emphasize. LSU has a pretty decent defense. They're not terrible. And Josh Heupel just lined right up and didn't run tempo. He was sort of taking the air out of the ball, and he just ran it on him and ran right at him. And he said, come and stop me. And they couldn't. And that's what I think makes this team so scary to opposing defensive coordinators. I'm sure the defensive coordinator at Kentucky knows this, even if the analysts don't. I just think that you see everywhere where this game would have to be won by Kentucky, and Tennessee just has the advantage at the moment. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout. In fact, I don't think it is. Kentucky really has a penchant for making games ugly and muddying the waters, and I think they'll do that here. They love hanging on to the ball, time of possession, and everything. They will do that. But don't delude yourself thinking like, oh, this is for sure, this is going to be a shootout. I think if you come in with that mentality, you're setting yourself up to get beat like 45-20. And that would be a mistake on Kentucky's part. So just my 2 cents there in terms of what makes Tennessee so scary in this matchup. I think it's a bad matchup for Kentucky in this one.
Yeah, some critics think that Tennessee's one game of the year was the Alabama game, but that LSU performance is becoming more and more impressive all the time because LSU's turning out to be a pretty good team themselves.
Exactly.
So.
There was a lot in that LSU game that went Tennessee's way. I mean, LSU fumbles the opening kickoff, and there was things like that. But Josh Heupel changes the way other coaches coach because they see what Tennessee is doing and they go, okay, I can't win this with field goals. And so they go for it on 4th down. And that's what really bit Brian Kelly in that LSU game. He went for it on 4th down like 4 times and missed like 3 of them. And then you're screwed because he'll turn right around and score a touchdown on you. And suddenly you went for it on 4th down twice and you're down by 21 points and you're buried. And that's what Heupel does to you. And he changes the way that you coach. He changed the way that Stoops coached last year. I mean, you don't have to look anywhere beyond that Kentucky game last year to see how much he changes because Kentucky saw, Tennessee was up by 10 in that 4th quarter at a certain point, and Kentucky's chasing, and they have to throw the ball, and they have to get kind of desperate, and that's not their strength. That's not what they do and where they excel. And he gets you out of your comfort zone and makes you coach in these ways that you don't want to. And it's a nightmare scenario for the teams that they play. This game is not going to be easy. I know I'm really talking it up, but it's just because, as I said, I've been listening to Kentucky analysis, and I think they're deluding themselves a little bit in this game because they're thinking, wouldn't it be so sweet to upset Tennessee here? They're having a magical season. They've done it to us in the past with some of our best teams. We can do this. I think Kentucky can win in this game, but I think the only way that happens, realistically speaking, the only way that happens is if Tennessee beats themselves. It has to come down to Hendon Hooker throwing interceptions, Hendon Hooker fumbling the ball, Jalen Wright fumbling the ball, special teams mishaps, defensive scores even potentially for Kentucky like Alabama had, or a special teams score, for Kentucky where Barryon Brown could return something for a touchdown. And that kid's really talented and could really have a day, I think. Kentucky has the pieces to capitalize on Tennessee's mistakes. I'll put it that way. They can capitalize on Tennessee's mistakes, but they got to get bounces to go their way in this one to win. It just seems like a serious uphill battle for Kentucky, just with, and even the teams are similarly talented, I would even say. But the way that Heupel coaches and the way that Tennessee's team plays and the mentality that they play with, it's a really bad matchup for Kentucky. And I don't know if you feel that, but that just going into this one, I've been skeptical all season. I chose Florida to beat Tennessee this year, and I chose Alabama to beat Tennessee. And look how that turned out. I got egg all over my face. But in this one, it just seems like a really bad matchup for Kentucky. Just my feeling there.